Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Let's Talk About the Art of Mentoring. My name's Dave, and I'm joined here by Pastor Benny, our senior pastor. Why don't you say hi, Pastor Benny?
Hi.
Tonight's going to be a fun night. Let me just give you a brief layout of how things are going to go so you kind of understand what's going on. Pastor Benny's going to give us a framework around mentoring for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes. And then we're going to head into a time of Q&A. And that's really important for us so that we can kind of answer your questions. This webinar is designed to be interactive. We don't want it just to be a spiel where Pastor Benny speaks on and on. But we really want to answer the burning questions that are on your heart and in your mind. So please, by all means, write whatever questions come to mind. Yep. You also have the ability to upvote any questions that you like. So if someone else writes a question that you are interested to find out the answer for, make sure you upvote that. That will bring it to the top of the list and make it more likely that we get to it tonight. We also have some polls that, if you wouldn't mind helping us, that would help us greatly to find out some things about mentoring that are on your heart. For example, what kind of things are you interested in being mentored in? Or whether you're at a stage of life where you're looking for a mentor, looking to mentor someone else, maybe both, maybe neither. Answering those polls will just give us a good clue of, where you're at and help us to kind of understand as well where you're journeying with this. Yeah. So without any further ado, let's throw this time to Pastor Benny.
Thank you.
And he's going to bring us in.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for honoring me with your time tonight, and I'm so glad to have Dave here, who's going to help us all the way through, vetted questions and stuff like that. But please try to focus on what I have to say, because I know that this can be a distractingly good-looking young pastor, but just stay with me, okay? Now, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's the topic of mentoring. And interestingly, when I put out the poll on Facebook to try and find out what are some of the subjects that you are interested in, mentoring actually came up right at the top. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So why don't I just pray, and then after that, we're going to jump into the topic. Father, thank you so much for tonight, and thank you for all my brothers and sisters from different parts of the world that has tuned in to have a listen on this important subject. So we commit this time now to you. Make this a fruitful time for us in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. When I first entered the ministry now about 30 years ago, like many young preachers, my initial dream was really to preach to thousands. I wanted to be like an evangelist like Billy Graham or Reinhard Bonnke. And I would spend hours literally practicing, how to speak like them. But now that I had the opportunity to actually speak to thousands, I actually realized that it does not truly satisfy. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I do believe that God has called me to be a preacher and a teacher, and I believe I'm called to be a teacher to the body of Christ. But I can honestly tell you that there's no greater joy for me today than to take a young man, when you pour your life and your passion into that person, and then you step back and you watch the person blossom and mature. And that is what brings me the greatest joy today. Now, you may ask, how did I come into this conviction? I want to quickly share with you a little bit on my own personal journey in this area. Now, sometime in 1991, I was actually doing my quiet time, and I was reading a passage from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6 to verse 8, where the Apostle Paul, in one of his last letters written from prison, said this: "For I am already poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I've kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. Not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." When I read that passage that morning, I remember asking myself, why is it that the Apostle Paul is so confident and so sure that he has done everything that the Lord wanted him to do? In fact, he was so confident, he said, "I'm ready to go and meet my Maker. I'm ready to stand before my Maker." And I remember that morning asking myself, am I ready to stand before my Maker? Am I sure that I've fought the fight, I've run the race, and I'm ready to go and meet God? And my honest answer at that point was just, I'm not sure. I really wasn't sure. And then I asked the Lord, why is it that the Apostle Paul is so sure? And that was when I had one of those moments where I heard a voice outside of myself. Some people call it the audible voice of God. Now, in all my life, I probably heard it only twice. And this was one of those moments. And that was when the Holy Spirit spoke to me. And this is what he said. He says, Benny, look behind him. Look behind him. And in an instant, I kind of realized why the Apostle Paul was able to say that he was ready to go and meet God. You know why? Because at that point, when the Apostle Paul looked behind him, you know what he would see? He would see a whole string of Timothy, Philemon, Tituses, who are carrying the torch after him. And I think that's why he said, I've run the race, I've fought the fight, I'm ready to go and meet my God in heaven. And I asked myself, what about me at that point? And I honestly tell you, when I look behind me at that point in my ministry, I really see nobody. You see, I was an itinerant preacher at that time. I had many exciting times preaching from conferences to conferences, going from camps to camps. I had a lot of width, but not much depth. The ministry was glamorous, but it lacked long-term impact. At that time, I thought my ministry was like, 6 feet wide, 6 inch deep, lots of width, not much depth. And then I remember saying to the Lord, I said, Lord, if this is what you're saying to me, if you're calling me to a ministry of discipleship and mentoring, then I want to lay a fleece before you. And I said to the Lord that day, if this is really an area you want me to go into, then send me the people who want me to disciple them or mentor them. I'm not going to approach anyone. But if this is really from you, you send them to me, and then I will know. And interestingly, after that, over the next 3 months, God just sent me graciously 12 young people who approached me independently to try and to ask me to help them spiritually. And that was the start of my first mentoring group. And it was like, that started me on the adventure of wanting to go to mentor and to disciple. And since then, I have been addicted to this ministry of growing another person. And I'm glad to tell you that out of that original group of 12, several has gone into the full-time ministry, while others are faithfully serving in leadership positions in the body of Christ all over the place. And I think this is the impact of mentoring and discipleship. Now, let me answer a few common questions first, and so that we can form a framework for us to interact further later on. Firstly, I want to answer the question, what is mentoring? I think the best way for me to illustrate what mentoring is when, if I were to take 2 pieces of bricks, okay, one is a go brick, the other is a lead brick, and then I rub these 2 pieces of brick together over a period of time. Now, after that, when you look at the 2 pieces of brick, essentially they are the same. A gold brick is still a gold brick. A lead brick is still a lead brick. But when you look carefully, you'll realize that on the gold brick, there's a little bit of lead. And on the lead brick, there's a little bit of gold. Now, that in essence is what mentoring really is. It's when you take 2 persons and you rub them together over a period of time. And after a while, a little bit of me rubs off on you. And a little bit of you rubs off on me. The Bible puts it this way in Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I think this is what mentoring is all about. It is a relational experience between 2 persons rubbing off one upon the other. That's what mentoring is. Now, if I can give you 2 working definitions so that we can have a common perspective towards this in our discussion, okay? And the 2 working definitions I would use, one is from Stanley and Clinton in their book Connecting, and they describe mentoring this way. Mentoring is the relational experience in which one person empowers another by sharing God-given resources. If I pull out some keywords from that definition, it will be this. Mentoring is a relational experience. Okay, at the end of the day, it is all about a relationship. Okay, it's a relational experience. And the other keyword is the word empower, in which one person empowers another. And another word is sharing. Sharing what? God-given resources. You put that together and you got a working definition of mentoring. Here's another one that I've written over time as I spend time with different people. I begin to develop an idea about what mentoring is, and here's how I would put it. Mentoring is an intentional relationship where a mentor identifies and facilitates the work of God in the life of a mentee to the end of growing him or her in spirituality, character, attitudes, and skills. So here are some keywords that I would like to put out. Firstly, it's an intentional relationship. I think that mentoring at its best, it's not something that just happened, but I think it's something that intentionally we enter into a relationship with. And that is when mentoring at its best can take place. It's an intentional relationship where a mentor identifies and facilitates the work of God in another person. And I like to point out that it's not the mentor's job to go and change a person, but I think the mentor's role is to identify and facilitate the work of God in the life of another person. In other words, God is in spiritual mentoring, God is already working in the mentee's life. And our job as a mentor is to come alongside them and to be able to identify what God is doing and to facilitate it so that whatever God wants to do in that person's life can take place. And the end goal is ultimately to grow that person. It could be in spirituality, in their character, in their attitudes, in their skills. So I hope that these two working definitions can help us to come to a common place. Now, another question people may ask is, why is mentoring so important? Why is it so important? I think one of the greatest crises facing the church today is a lack of leaders. I don't know if that's true in where you come from, but I think it's definitely true where I'm at. You know, that one of the greatest crises facing the church today is a lack of leaders. And the solution to this crisis, I believe, is leadership development. Leadership development is the key to this crisis. But the key to leadership development is mentoring. Because without mentoring, there will be no leaders of substance. And without leaders of substance, the church will stagnate. And that is why it is so critical, my friends, that we pay attention to this ministry of mentoring. Okay, and that's why I'm passionate about this subject, and I hope that we can all have a good discussion on this area. Now, but many people would ask then, how do I find a mentor? Where do I start to look for someone that could journey with me? And here's where I'd like to give you one of the most important principles in finding a mentor, which is this. The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. Can I say it again? The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. You see, many people tell me that they cannot find any mentors in their church or in their organization, but I think the truth is that sometimes we don't even know what we're looking for. That is the root problem. And if we don't know what we're looking for, then even if God were to give us a divine appointment and someone crosses our path, who could actually input into our life, we may not recognize him. See, and I think you can never find it if you do not know what you're looking for. See, so the key issue is the mentoring issue. So the first thing I would challenge you to do if you are looking for a mentor today will be this. I think you should start by defining your mentoring issue. Sit down and take out a piece of paper and write down what is the area that I want to grow in. What is the issue that I really need to process with somebody. And once you define what is your mentoring issue, then when God allow your path to cross with someone who could actually speak into that area, you would actually recognize him or her as a God sent. Now, one of the best ways I can illustrate this would be just think about a man and a woman shopping. Now, okay, I know that this is a little bit of a stereotyping, but just to make my point, okay, generally speaking, okay, say, when I go shopping as a guy, I always go to the shopping center already having something in mind that I'm wanting to buy. Say, for example, that day, I wanted to buy some new shirts. So what I'll do is I end up in the shopping center, and the first thing I do, I head straight for the shirt section. And the moment I find a shirt that fit me, what do? I buy the same shirt in 6 different colors, and then I can walk out in 30 minutes. My wife will go shopping, walk around the entire shopping center for 6 hours, and then she'll come out and tell me nothing to buy. You know why? Because she don't know what she's looking for. But if I already have in mind what I'm looking for, how many of you agree? It is likely that I will find it. You see? And I think it's the same in our search for a mentor. We must first know what we're looking for. So here's the principle. The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. So sit down and write down what are some areas that you really need help in? What are some areas that you want to grow in? And then you know what you're looking for. Now, if you know what you're looking for, and God give you a divine appointment, you found someone that could possibly help you, then you may ask, how do I then initiate a mentoring relationship? I would like to give you some ideas that you could explore, okay? Here are 6 ideas you could do. Number 1 is this. If you already met the person and you know the person, then I would say call the prospective mentor, and then you ask to meet about a specific issue. Okay? That means you know what the issue is. Call up that person and say, hey, can I meet with you over this area in my life? And that could well be the start of a mentoring relationship. Or 2, if you don't know the person that well and you saw that person in their strength, operating in their strength, walk up to the person, affirm his expertise, and then you ask for help to develop yours. That you say, hey, I saw that you're so good in raising your child and the way that you relate to your son. I really need some help in this very area of parenting. Would you help me? That could be the start of a mentoring relationship. Here's number 3. Ask for feedback in the area that you want him to help you with. Say, for example, you have just led worship and you really feel that you need more help in this area. Then after you led worship, go up to that person that you want him to help you in that area of leading worship. Ask him, what do you think? What's your feedback on the way that I led earlier on? And that could be the start of a mentoring relationship. Here's number 4. I would encourage you, if you know that there's someone who could help you in an area where you want to grow in, you turn up when there are opportunities to interact with that person. You know, I grab opportunities like this. You know, like where if there's an opportunity where I could meet a person and I could spend time with a person that I want to input into my life, I grab every opportunity to be where that person is. Take, for example, when years ago, when Pastor Edmund Chan mentioned that he wanted to come to Perth to actually spend some time in his sabbatical, I was the first one to put up my hand and I said, hey, Edmund, what about this? If you come to Perth, why don't I help you to get a place to stay? I'll get you a car, and then I could spend time with you, you see. And that's what I did. I actually put out my hand. I volunteered to get a home for him, get a car for him, and I make sure that the home is actually quite near to where I am so that it's easy for us to meet up. And I actually ended up having the opportunity to spend time with him. And then I roped a whole bunch of Asian pastors from our city, and every month I would get him to meet with them. And that was the start of many mentoring relationships that he had with pastors in Perth. See, but what's my point? You know, if I really want someone to mentor me, I will pursue it. And that's what I mean. So if there's an opportunity where you could interact with a person, show up. Okay, and number 5, here's the important one. If that person offers you an opportunity to meet up, accept that invitation. Just show up. You know, and sometimes we miss opportunities like this because we're not prepared to put in a bit, put in some time, put in some effort so that and you could get the person to actually be in a relationship with you. Years ago, I had an opportunity to be mentored by a wonderful spiritual leader, a global spiritual leader. I won't mention names here, but he came to our city. I had the opportunity to interact with him. At the end of it, he offered me a mentoring relationship. And I felt it was such a privilege to be able to be mentored by someone of that stature. But then after that, he asked me to come for his conference, you know, in America. And I wasn't willing to go all the way there. So the first year, I said no to him. I said I couldn't make it. Second year, he asked me again. Again, I said no. And by the third year, when he asked me and I said I couldn't make it, he actually sent me an email and said, look, if this is how you want us to relate, but you're not willing to put in time, this is not going to work out. And that was the end of that relationship. I actually missed a great opportunity to be mentored by a spiritual giant. It's because I wasn't willing to actually put in the time and the effort. And here's one last one, just as starters, just in initiating ideas. As an opener, if you meet up with that person, why don't you ask him or her about their mentoring experience? And ask them if they have ever mentored anyone. And that could be a start of a mentoring conversation. And at the end of it, you could actually ask, would you be willing, to journey with me during this season of my life? Now, I'm just giving you some possible ways to help initiate a potential mentoring relationship. And as you meet, you can gradually ascertain whether the mentee can draw from the mentor and whether the mentor really wants to invest in the mentee's life. Okay, so those are some ideas there for you to initiate a mentoring relationship. Just one or two more questions I want to tackle. Now, what do mentors look for? If you're looking for a mentor, can I just tell you what mentors are looking for so that you can actually position yourself to be a good mentee? Okay, here are some ideas for you. What do mentors actually look for? Number one, a good learning posture. I think every mentor appreciates a mentoree or a mentee who has a good learning posture. Currently, I have a few mentoring relationships with pastors of different churches, ranging from mega churches to new church plants. But I think what makes the mentoring relationship so refreshing, in whether they are from a big church or a small church, is the great learning posture that they have. That is always what I appreciate. Every one of them would come prepared, for example, with questions and issues that they want to process together. I'm spending time with Dave here and Amos, who is also another one of my pastors. And each time they come with questions. We are going together because this season they want to learn how to be pastors. So we are going through the book of 1 Timothy together. And why not, And the beautiful thing is that if people come prepared, ready to glean, ready to ask questions, that's what makes mentoring relationships powerful. One of the idioms that we use in mentoring is this: the quality of a mentoring time is determined by the quality of the questions that we bring to the table. The quality of a mentoring time is determined by the quality of the questions that we bring to the table. So if we come every time to a mentoring session prepared and armed with poignant questions, you are likely to walk away with a lot. But if you come with nothing, you may actually go home with nothing. So come prepared to every mentoring session with good questions, issues that you like to process with your mentor. Come ready to glean, to think, and to grow together. Okay, a good learning posture. Here's number two. I think it's good to be open and transparent. Openness, transparency, authenticity. Mentoring relationships achieve its greatest effect when there is openness and transparency. I know that there may be things one may not be comfortable to share at that point of time, but if that's the case, it's totally okay. And we can let the mentor know that you're not able to share yet and why. But that's totally okay. But what we must avoid is to say something that is not truthful, or to just avoid the issue or to leave a wrong impression. This could end up hindering the mentoring relationship. Here's the third thing mentors look for. Be ready to take responsibility. I think good mentees take personal responsibility for their own growth, for their own failure and successes. When blind spots are pointed out to you by your mentors in the mentoring process, we must be prepared to deal with them and not deny fault or to blame others. But the role of the mentor is not to run your life, but to provide right perspectives to enlarge your horizon, show you the right principles that are biblically rooted, give you handles so that you can apply the right practice, okay, and to move you along and constantly point you back to the right source of power, who is God Himself. So mentoring is all about personal growth and development. So there must be the hunger and the drive to want to improve and to do better. So I actually am on the lookout for mentees who take initiative, hungry to chase for more. And there's no greater joy for a mentor than to be able to see their mentees take intentional steps to grow and to change. That's what all mentors look for. Number 4, be committed to the process. If you really want to have a mentoring relationship, then be committed to the process. The last thing we need in a mentoring relationship are unmet learning agreements, unmet expectations. I think mentoring relationship will die a premature death when one or both parties fail to keep their commitment to the process. So I would encourage you to do that. Be committed to the process. Number 5, I think it's always healthy for every mentee to remember to keep healthy boundaries, to respect healthy boundaries. Mentors are usually busy people, and so be prepared not to demand more time from your mentor than what is available. So respect the privacy of your mentor. Keep confidence as they share their life with you. And can I just add this? We should always avoid using our associations, with well-known mentors for our own agenda. And name throwing is not a good practice. I leave you one last thing. Number 6 is honor and appreciate your mentors. Encourage your mentors because mentors need to be encouraged too. And occasionally I will write a note of appreciation, a word of affirmation, an act of kindness, little gifts depending on their love language. So bless them even as they bless you. Those are the 6 things I want to leave with you that will make you a good mentee, that every mentor will die to spend time with. Okay? Now, how do you know if you have really found a good mentoring fit? How do you know if this is really a mentor fit for you? I'd like to suggest 3 things just as a framework, and we can discuss more later on. Number 1 is this. In a good mentoring fit, there is a chemistry that is natural. In other words, when you meet up with that person, you just feel at ease, and you could actually go back and forth. And it's not like every time you see your mentor and your first thought is, whatever you feed, I will swallow. It's not quite like that, but it is really a relationship where we can have this natural chemistry, the freedom to agree, a freedom to disagree even. And so it's not like every time you meet up with a mentor, you're going, oh. No, it's not like that. That will be hero worship. That's not mentoring. But I think it's about that freedom, the chemistry that is natural. Okay? And because the chemistry is so natural and you enjoy having that time with the mentor and vice versa, then the second thing is, then you have a communication that is open. You have open communication, you have that freedom to share, and there's an authenticity and naturalness about the whole thing. And then thirdly, you have a commitment that is steadfast. Okay, there's a chemistry that is natural, so you like one another and you enjoy spending time together. There's a communication that is open, so there's lots of open communication and a freedom to share. And thirdly, both of you are committed. You have a commitment that is steadfast. Committed to this whole mentoring relationship. So those 3 will tell you that you got a good mentoring fit. Now, however, can I encourage you that all mentoring relationships, I believe, should be reviewed periodically just to ensure that the relationship is still healthy, that it is still mutually meaningful and beneficial. Now, this exercise of evaluating will also help to give us an opportunity to actually stop or to change the nature of the relationship when needed. Okay, and a common question people always ask me when I talk about this is, Pastor, how long should a mentoring relationship last? How long should a mentoring relationship last? My standard answer to that would be this. I think every mentoring relationship will die a natural death. Okay, every mentoring relationship will die a natural death. Now, what do I mean by that? Maybe this is a good point for me to just draw a simple diagram for you to illustrate what is the life cycle of a mentoring relationship. If I could just put this simple drawing on the board. Imagine, if you can, this axis. Anything before this axis that is before the mentoring relationship start. After this axis, the mentoring relationship have officially started. So typically what happened is this. Say, for example, Dave would have come to me and said, Benny, would you be willing to mentor me? Now, if I don't know him and I'm not very sure if we are really made for, it's a good mentoring fit. So typically what happened is this. If I think I would want to explore this, so I put it as a dotted line because the relationship haven't started yet, okay? We are discerning if we should do it. So what I'll do is say, hey Dave, what about we catch up over a cup of coffee? And then we explore if this relationship will work. And so I have coffee with him once, have coffee with him twice. But the third time we have coffee, I think we would have already kind of figured out whether or not we have the mentoring fit. Because during this time, I would have already found out how keen is he to actually learn from me and how willing am I to want to impart into his life. Okay? And assuming that it has been a good experience and I'm ready to kick off that relationship, this is the point where I would want to formalize it. Now, in our situation, we happen to be both pastors, and so it is a relationship that is not with a younger person or with a freshie, but it's someone who is already in ministry. Then what I would like to do at this point would be to introduce, to formalize the relationship. Now, you may be wondering, why would I want to formalize it? Why do we want to make it so formal? I think the higher up the leadership ladder you go, the more important it is to formalize it. And let me explain to you why. Because if I don't formalize it, and sometimes people do that, don't worry about it, let's just continue to fellowship, let's just continue to drink coffee. Now, if I don't formalize it, then all we have is a friendly relationship. Then all I can give him is friendly advice. But the moment I formalize it, I have introduced into this relationship something that was not present there before. And the thing I'm talking about is spiritual authority. I'm introducing into this relationship a new element. Is called spiritual authority. Now, if we have a formal mentoring relationship, I think the onus, whenever I give him a counsel, the onus is now on Dave to actually take this counsel and bring it before God and to take this seriously enough to actually seek God if this is something that he should follow. Now, I do not make decisions for him, but whatever advice I give in a formal mentoring relationship, he has to take it to heart and bring it before God to make a good decision. So I would formalize that with a simple statement like, Dave, would you give me the privilege of journeying with you through this season of your life? Now, every single word is carefully chosen. Dave, would you give me the privilege? Sometimes as mentors, we think we have this exalted idea, of how important we are. And then we would actually tell people, Dave, I want to mentor you. You're lucky, not. I don't think that should be our mentality. I think it's a privilege for us to be able to journey with somebody in their life. So the privilege is all mine. Say, Dave, would you give me the privilege of journeying with you? See, and mentoring is not about controlling another person. It's about journeying, coming alongside somebody else and pilgrimage together with them. We journey with them. And through this season of your life, I cannot assume that it's going to be a lifelong relationship. But through this season, let's journey together. Okay, so of course, by this time, I would expect that he will say yes and not no, because we have been spending time already, actually. So, assuming that the answer is yes, our mentoring relationship begins, and the life cycle looks something like a bell curve. Okay, and here's how we go through it. This is phase 1. And then we enter phase 2. Phase 1 is what I would call a discernment phase. We are discerning if we are made for each other. Okay, then phase 2 is this part here. It just takes up very little time, but it is a definition phase. Definition phase. Definition phase because this is where we define what the relationship would look like. For example, how long. We define things like what is the frequency of the relationship? What is the mentoring issue? What are the things we're going to talk about when we meet? Who is going to initiate the meeting? Who will call who to initiate the meeting? Stuff like that. We just define what the relationship would look like. Okay? And once it's defined, then we can begin. And then we enter phase 3. I will call this a development phase. And this is the phase where the mentor is imparting and the mentoree is gleaning. And this is where most of the growth will take place. And this is where most of the time will go to. And then finally, we enter phase 4, which is a departure phase. This is the phase where the mentoring relationship will come naturally to an end. Now, of course, some relationships can end positively, which means that whatever I have to impart to Dave, he has already learned, or he has come to a point where he needs to mentor other people, and so the relationship begins to end and positively. Other times it can end negatively, meaning which it dies a premature death, either because of conflict or neglect or something like that, or we did not follow through with some of the agreements we make, and the relationship can die negatively too. But the important thing is this: it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative, but when it is time to die, let it die. Because we cannot derive so much significance from a mentoring relationship that we can't let go. Ultimately, when it's time to end, let it end. So this is the phase where we are actually in the discernment phase. We say, come and see. Okay? In this definition phase, we say, come and commit. Okay? And when we at the definition phase, come and commit. At the development phase, we say, come and learn. Okay? This is where most of the learning takes place. But finally, we say, go and multiply. Now, if it's positive, we say, go and multiply. If it's negative, we say, go and die. No, just kidding. Just go and multiply, okay? And I think that's how most mentoring relationships will go through. And that's a life cycle of a mentoring relationship. I hope that makes sense to you. And later on, we can interact over this, okay? Just one or two more frameworks before we enter into a time of question and answer. Now, you may ask, during this development phase, what are some of the roles that mentors play? What do I do as a mentor? There are 8 things that I believe all mentors do. Number 1, I'm an affirmer in times of uncertainty. All of our mentorees will go through seasons when they are uncertain, when they go through things that they are not quite sure what is going on, and they really need guidance. And in times when they are uncertain about their own abilities and capabilities, this is where we come alongside them and we affirm them. We are an encourager in times of failures. It's inevitable that our mentorees or mentees can fail. And when they fail, we must be there to encourage them. We are a friend in times of sorrow. They go through seasons when they are so broken, and seasons when they are going through tough times. And we really need to be a friend, for a shoulder for them to cry on. I'm a motivator in times of challenges. There are times when God could be pushing our mentees into a next season, or to enter, or to take up something, and they don't feel confident about it. And this is where I come in to be a motivator. And if I believe that this is something that they need to do, I would encourage them and I would motivate them to take up the challenge. I need to be a guide in times of decision making. Okay, and we can talk a lot about this, but there are often our mentees reach a place of a crossroad and they don't know where to go. Should they go left? Should they go right? Should they do this? Should they not do this? And that's the time where we step in to be a guide in their decision making. We are a light in times of integrity. A lot of our mentees go through situations where their integrity can be tested. And I'm there really to be a light in times where they need to be integral, when they need to be honest, when they need to do the right thing. We are a light in times like this. I'm a model in times of devotion. One thing I've learned about a devotional life is this: it never gets any easier. You could be a pastor, a missionary, you could be an old-time Christian. It doesn't get easier with time, but we bring them back to basics again and again and again. And here's the last thing I do. I'm a confronter in times of error. It's inevitable that our mentorees will go through times when they need to be corrected. And we must be ready to do that, to confront when it is when they make mistakes and they do the wrong thing. We need to correct and to confront. One of the sayings we have in mentoring is this: every mentor must be a head, a shoulder, and a foot. What do I mean by that? We are a head, a source of counsel to our mentorees, and we are a shoulder for them to cry on when they need comfort, and we are also a kick in the butt if they need correction. And I think that's what mentors do. We need to do all three. We are a mind for them to pick on when they need counsel, a shoulder for them to cry on if they need comfort, but we are also a kick in the butt if they need correction. But always remember, it must come in that order. We must first be a source of wisdom, a source of comfort, before we earn the right to actually confront and to correct them. I think this is something that all mentors need to do. During the developmental phase, where we spend most of our time in the mentoring relationship, there are certain focus that we need to have. Here are 7 mentoring focus. When I'm spending time with my mentees and mentorees, here are 7 areas that I would look out for. Number 1, in principles. I like to be able to speak into that area of principles in which they live their life. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the principle that is behind the stuff that you do? It's good to explore that. Are they biblically rooted principles? Posture is another huge area that as mentors we need to speak into, because right principles can be lost in bad posture. And what is the posture of your heart when you do what you do, when you say what you say? What is really the posture of our hearts? I look at the area of their practice. Are you doing what you're doing in the right way? Is this really a best practice? I think about power. Where is the source of your dependence? Are you depending on God? Are you depending on other things? And so we look at the whole area of power. Think of the plans that they have. I think it's good that we also guide our mentees in the area of their pathway, their plans in which they want to achieve that which they set out to do. Think about problems. What are the challenges that they are facing? Can you speak into that? And lastly, progress. How are they doing so far? It's good to chart progress with your mentees so that you can take them from where they are to where they want to go. I'll leave you one last thing, and then we answer some questions, okay? And this is an important question, which is this: what is the end game of mentoring? What am I mentoring towards? What really am I mentoring towards? Just to quickly answer your question, I'll draw a simple diagram. Now, if I'm spending time with someone as a spiritual guide or as a mentor, there are 4 areas that I want to work towards. Okay, and the first is this: where do I begin? Whatever the issue may be, I want to begin by giving a mentoree. I mentor them towards a godly orientation. I think that's the starting point, a godly orientation, because this is the compass of their heart. This is the lens through which they view everything. Every decision they make, every priority they set, it must be viewed through a godly orientation, or if you like, a godly worldview. This is the lens through which they view their life. And I need to be sure that I'm mentoring them towards having this godly lens in which they view everything. So it's not just about their spiritual life, it's also their work life, it's also their family life. Everything is viewed through the lens of who God is and what God says. See? And if their worldview is one that is controlled by who God is and what God says, then I think they already have the right compass through which they navigate all of life. Okay? And once they have a godly orientation, the next thing that I will want to see is that out of this godly worldview, this godly orientation, we mentor them towards value change. Now, this is a very important aspect. In order to really achieve what our mentoring relationship is for, I like to see them experiencing what we call value change. And this is so critical. One of the best ways I can illustrate it is think about a verse like Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28. Now, in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28, there's a verse that goes like this, right? Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but he must work, doing something useful with his hands so that they may have something to share with those in need. Now, this verse has a few things in there that really illustrate what value change is all about. Now, you notice what the verse says. The verse says, anyone who has been stealing must stop stealing, right? But what must he do? He must work with his hands so that he has something to share with others. So here are three things, right? Stealing, working, and sharing. Now you notice that all these are actions, right? There are three actions there. Stealing, stop stealing, start working so that you can share with others. Now, so if I approach my mentee and I say, hey, look, you need to stop stealing. You need to start working. And then he said, okay, Pastor, I'll do that. I'll stop stealing and I will start working. But imagine, what is the value that actually drives these actions? Now, why is he stealing in the first place? Maybe it's because he has the value of greed that is driving him, right? So now I've addressed his action and telling him to stop stealing, and he stopped stealing. And now he's working, which is great. But if the same value of greed is still driving him, then guess what? He may be doing the right thing, but he still has not experienced a value change. He is still greedy inside. The only difference is that now he managed to satisfy his greed with a more legitimate way, which is working rather than stealing. Are you with me on this? So there is a change in action on the outside. He stopped stealing, start working, but the value is the same. There is no value change, only behavior modification. And that's what's happening. And once that is the case, that person may stop stealing, start working, still gather a lot of money, but he may not share with anybody. Why? Because he's still greedy at heart. So until he experiences a value change from greed to generosity, if he experiences that value change, then it will lead to the final goal, which is that he will share. See, and I think that's what value change is all about. It's so easy for us to actually address behavior modification and not actually experience value change. But in mentoring, we are working towards giving them a godly compass, orientation, and then mentoring towards value change. And once you have value change, then, sometimes a person may change the value, but you don't really seal it until you have the third thing, which is accountable actions. It is accountable actions that will seal the value change and make it long-term. Okay, accountable actions. And therefore, I must outline accountable action, and this accountable action seals the value change and then confirms the godly orientation. And once all this happen, then we achieve the end goal of mentoring, which is life transformation. And we are talking here about long-term life transformation. So those are the 4 basic things that I would mentor towards. If you ask me what's the end game of mentoring, I will say this is what they are. I start with a godly orientation that will result in value change, and when it is sealed by accountable action, it will lead to life transformation. I think this is what mentoring is all about. So I would challenge you, every one of us, that everyone who are all out, and those of you who are in a position where you could mentor others, I would say, here are the 5 practices of effective mentors. Let's practice mentoring personally. Prioritize mentoring intentionally in our life. Persevere in mentoring a few people persistently. And then plan to mentor towards mastering life's transitions purposefully. And may we plan mentoring as a long-term vision for ourselves and for our organizations corporately. And this is my prayer, and I hope will be the outcome of our time together. Leadership development, my friends, takes time. and we must be willing to invest the time that we need to do this so that we can grow our next generation. I think it was John Maxwell who said this, if you want something that will last long, you need to plant an oak tree. If you want something overnight, then you're going to have to settle for a mushroom. And I think he's totally right. If we really want to see the church transform and leadership raise, we need to have the foresight to catch this vision of mentoring. So my goal as I enter into the next season of my life is not just to engage in the ministry, but really to empower the next generation. That's what we are working towards. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Pastor Benny. That was very encouraging, very affirming, and very enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, we're about to head into a time of Q&A and about to also release some of our poll results. But before we do that, can I just encourage any of you who are watching? I know Pastor Benny actually teaches these things as he travels when he goes itinerant, and he speaks at different church camps and workshops and things like that. And you've taken quite a long time to accumulate all this material that you've just shared with us. So if you in any way want to support this ministry and support this, I know it's Pastor Benny's heart to be able to share this with you and just bless you with it with no charge. But if you feel led in any way to be generous towards this ministry and to support it, there should be some slides coming up on the stream now, which would point you in how you can do that. One of them is fcc.live. That's our Faith Community Church page where you can give towards the ministry that goes on here at Faith Community Church. The other one is for Arrow's Resources in Singapore. That's Pastor Benny's personal ministry, where his aim is to really equip and to bless a lot of churches out there, to walk alongside them and to help them by equipping them in all the things and all the materials that he comes up with. So if you feel led, feel free to head down to those places and donate, give. We thank you for your generosity. Otherwise, let's have a look at some of the poll results. We had a look. We asked the question, what areas are you looking to be mentored in at the start of this session? And here are the results. So it seems that the majority of people are looking for mentoring in spiritual growth and ministry development, 60%. 25% are looking at life direction, 11% at family life, and surprisingly, only 3% looking for work-life mentoring.
Okay.
So that's very interesting to know. There's another question that we're going to post up now, which is basically, what are you looking for in the stage of life that you're at right now? Are you looking to be mentored by someone? Are you looking to mentor someone? Maybe you're looking for both, or maybe you're totally happy without either. I don't know how you feel, especially after Pastor Benny's 30 minutes of sharing about mentoring, but help us out. Let us know what your thoughts are there. Right now, we're going to head into the question and answer. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have any question that you want answered, make sure that you write that in the Q&A section, and make sure you vote for the questions that you want to get answered, because we do have a limited time, and the more popular questions are more likely to be answered. So let's head into it. First question is this. It was asked by Wei Song, and it's a great question. I know it's a question that you loved. Which is mixed gender mentoring possible, and are there pitfalls to it?
Yeah. Okay. I think this is a very important question. I would say that I believe that mentoring, intensive mentoring, is very gender sensitive. Especially we are talking about one-on-one mentoring. It is very gender sensitive. And I would say, without any qualification, that you always avoid mentoring someone of the opposite sex, especially on a one-to-one basis. Now, in a group mentoring situation, it has different dynamics. So when it's always a group mentoring, I think it's fine to be mixed gender. But when it's one-on-one, it is critical that we keep it gender sensitive. And let me explain to you the reason why. The reason why is because it takes two things for bonding to happen. Okay, and the two things are basically, one is frequency, the other is intensity. Okay, frequency and intensity. When these two things come together, it's like two hands, and once there's frequency and there's intensity, it will make a noise. See, and the problem is this: if you are in a one-to-one relationship with someone of the opposite sex, how many of you will agree there is a lot of intensity because you're talking deep stuff one-on-one with each other? It's deep. And then secondly, if it is frequent enough, if it's an intentional mentoring relationship, it happens consistently over a period of time. And if that is the case, you have both frequency and intensity, it can make a noise. Spiritual, in other words, bonding will happen. Okay, bonding will happen. And when that bonding happens, Dave, it really is like, it starts with emotional bonding. And I would like to believe that no Christian ever planned to commit adultery. No Christian planned to do that. But why do they end up there? It's because of emotional bonding. See? And here's the idea. If I can show you a picture that will just put all this together. In every relationship that we have with another person, there is always an emotional distance between us. Okay? And as we get closer, as we spend more time together, as we have intensity and frequency, this emotional distance becomes shorter and shorter. In other words, we become closer and closer emotionally. And the way that human beings are wired, as we get closer and closer, it will have to reach an apex. And the apex, as the way that we are wired as different genders, it always results in physical intimacy. And it really does. And it tends to do that. And if, therefore, when there's emotional bonding that happens, it will ultimately lead to something that you don't want to go. So I would say it's very, very gender sensitive, and we must avoid this, especially where you see both intensity and frequency. In a group mentoring situation, it will be different because the dynamics are different.
Okay. Well, thanks, Pastor. That was, I think those are very wise words and a very good, something to be very careful of,
absolutely.
Especially as we get on this mentoring journey. Let's have a look at the next question.
Yeah.
The next question is something that we also had to deliberate on as a church, and you had to share with us. But is there a difference between discipleship and mentoring? A lot of churches use the terms interchangeably. I know another person also asked a question, what's the difference between discipleship and counseling? So how do all these different terms, discipleship, mentoring, counseling, how do they differ? Do they differ?
Okay. Let me just kind of explain my perspective on this area. First of all, you'll notice that mentoring is not a biblical term. You don't find it in the Bible, right? What you find in the Bible is discipleship or discipling or being a disciple. There's the word mentor is actually a non-biblical word. And in fact, the word mentor it comes out of Greek mythology, where there is a man called Ulysses, who actually had to go and fight the Trojan War, and he had a son by the name of Telemachus. And because he had to go and fight the Trojan War, he passed his son to an old man whose name happened to be Mentor, and asked the old man to raise his son. And apparently he did a good job with it, and as a result, Telemachus grew up to be a godly man and actually end up helping the father to regain his kingdom. So that ever since then, the word mentor is used to denote someone who models for you an area of greatness. That's what a mentor is, someone who models for you an area of greatness. And that's how the dictionary would define it. But why do we use the word mentor then today? You see, what happened is, actually, I think of mentor as another word for biblical discipleship. Okay? And the reason why is because the word discipleship over time has begun to lose some of its connotation. Discipleship, biblically speaking, is much more than just Bible studies. And what happened in in discipleship today is that sometimes whenever people think discipleship, they immediately think of a series of Bible studies. And as a result, right, biblical discipleship has been reduced to something else, just as a Bible study thing. But when you look at the way that Jesus did his discipleship, it was never about just a class or Bible study. It was very life on life. How would Jesus do his discipleship? He would take his disciples and they go for a walk along the streets of Jerusalem. And when they see and they pass the temple and he would see this old lady throw 2 cents into the offering bag, Jesus would stop and say, this is a good time to teach my disciples about giving. Then he turned to them and said, you see that old lady throwing 2 cents into the offering bag? She has given more than all these rich people put together. And then all the disciples would go, oh. And then they walk a little further. You see a Pharisee at the street corner, praying with dust all over his head. And then he said, this is a good time to teach them about prayer. And then he turned to his disciples and said, see that guy over there with ash all over him? That's not how you should pray. If you pray, go into your closet and you pray. And where your Father sees in secret, and he will reward you in secret. And then all the disciples will go, oh, and that's how they learn. It's all life on life, very, very situational. But we have now kind of reduced discipleship to a series of Bible study. And so in the meantime, what the world has done is they have taken Jesus' concept of life on life, biblical discipleship, and they coined a new term for it and call it mentoring. And then they took it into the corporate world and make it work for them in powerful ways. And so in lawyering, in doctoring, they all have mentors now. And actually, it is biblical discipleship. See, and so today, I kind of think that if you think of mentoring in terms of its effects, in terms of biblical discipleship, then I think it would have the functionally is not that different from biblical discipleship. So whether you use discipleship or mentoring, you can use it almost interchangeably. But having said that, I do think that in terms of outworking, in terms of focus, there is a difference. Okay, and so I just want to paint a bigger picture of seeing biblical discipleship here, and then as part of it, you have discipleship as in teaching, training, Bible studies, and all that. But there's a lot of life learning, that is much bigger than just talking about Bible studies. But in terms of its focus, there could be a little bit of difference. I find that in our usage of it now, in mentoring is more about listening, whereas in discipleship is more about directing. So when I'm discipling a new person, I would be more directive in teaching him the word and telling him this is how he should live out his Christian life. But in mentoring, I will spend more time listening to what my mentee is going through and what he is wanting to understand from me. So in terms of function, there could be a slight difference. I think that discipleship is more focused on equipping, giving the person, the disciplee, what he needs to live out his Christian life, whereas in mentoring, it's more about journeying with a person. Okay, it's less directive, it's journeying with a person. I think in discipleship, it's more general, broad-based about the spiritual life. Whereas in mentoring, it tends to be more personal, it's more specific. You are scratching where the person is itching, see, because he comes to you for a specific area to grow in. In discipleship, I think it's more about spiritual growth, but in mentoring, it's about more life advice. So that is slightly different. So I think at the end of the discipleship or discipling experience, what you get is a good follower. But at the end of mentoring, I hope what you get is a good leader, because it's very, very specific. But the common area of both would be both needs to have accountability, whether it's a discipling relationship or mentoring relationship. Both need to be Bible-based, I think, in Christian mentoring and discipleship. And both needs to be relational. So it looks to me that there are a lot more commonality than there are differences. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question for some of those who are wanting to know the difference. But there's a lot of commonality. Okay.
Great, thanks, Pastor Benny.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the next question. Another good one by Wei Song, popular questions. Is peer mentoring effective? And
Peer mentoring?
what is it good for?
Yeah.
What might it lack?
I think, in a good mentoring thing, what happened is this. Say you have this person here. It's good for him to build what we call a mentoring constellation, okay? To make our life very effective and very full, it's good to have mentors above us. And then it's good to have mentees that we are investing into. But it's also good to have mates by our side. People that we could let our hair down with, people that are on the same level with us, but we are journeying together. And peer mentoring is like if you look at that we need a Paul above us, and we need a Timothy below us. And it's good to have a Silas, and it's good to have a Barnabas beside us. And I think that will make our life really wholesome. Okay, and what happens in peer mentoring is this level here, where we are on a journey together and we actually help one another along. Now, my personal take on peer mentoring is that I find that it can be very helpful in terms of learning together, in terms of journeying with another person who is on the same journey as you and wanting to grow in the same area as you. We could speak into each other's life, and it can be very, very helpful. Of course, in peer mentoring, if all we have are peer mentors, then I think our growth can be restricted in the sense that we can only take each other to where we are. Okay, but if you have mentors above us, then I think it can help us to go beyond. So I would say peer mentoring is good, but it does not therefore eradicate the need to have mentors above us. Yeah.
Cool. Nice sharing. Great. Let's have a look. Next question. This question is about how to be a mentor. So the question is, how do I remain consistent as a mentor? And what if I feel lacking as a mentor and I'm unable to give?
Yeah. I wonder if the question really is that I want to be able to give to that person, but if he's asking of me something that I don't have, this is where, if I know that I'm a little bit out of my depth, and he's asking me something I don't know or I can't help the person, one of the roles that mentors can play is to redirect, is to be able to point them to resources or point them to other people who could be very helpful for the mentee that we are journeying with. Now, if that's the where you're coming from, then I would say we could play the role of actually directing them to areas where they can get help, recommending them to people that could really help them because I'm not able to. And we can be honest and authentic about that. But if the question is about whether I could be as a mentor, going through a season where I feel really, really down, and I feel like I have very little to give, and then I think it's also at that point a very good time to be honest with our mentees and just to be able to say that I am going through a tough season. I'm not able to really give to you as much as I would like to. And you could actually call for a time of a break, and to give each other space. I think there's nothing wrong with that as well. And I think all our mentees actually appreciate authentic mentors. And so it's good to be authentic about it. And if you are going through a tough time, why not take a break? And you could always redirect them to somebody else who could be helpful for them in this season.
Yeah. I think that's very wise to not feel the expectation to always have to be there, and always have something to say, always be, the wiser one in the conversation.
We don't always have all the answers, really.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Cool, great. I hope that answered your question, whoever it was that asked that. Here is one. This one is more specific to the practicals,
Okay.
which is what is the ideal number of mentees that a mentor should take at any given one time?
Firstly, I think it is really depends on the mentor's capacity because we all have different capacities. For some, it could be it's just due to circumstances, and at this moment in my life, I may be able to take on a few more than before, simply because I'm in the season of my life where I could do that. But I need to be very cognizant of my own capacity so that I do not end up with unmet expectation. I think the last thing we want is to adopt a lot of mentees and then find that we have no time for them. It really brings a lot of disillusionment to the people that we are journeying with. So I would watch very carefully on my capacity. Now, and just bear in mind, our Lord Jesus himself only has 12. So I think it'll be quite presumptuous of us to think that we can have 100 people at one time that we can mentor. So it's just not being realistic. And here's the thing, if I take on a mentoring relationship, I must be prepared to give my time and invest in that relationship for it to really work. So watch our capacity. And I wouldn't, I feel that 12 is just about max for me. And I will be careful if I need to go beyond.
So does that change for you depending on the number of people that you're mentoring in terms of whether you're mentoring them one-on-one, whether you're mentoring them in a group? How does that affect?
I think absolutely it does matter because it does save a lot of time if you are doing a group mentoring situation. And even in a group mentoring situation, there is a limit before it becomes a cell group, or a connect group instead of a mentoring relationship. So my principle has always been, if you are going to do group mentoring, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3 is just about max. Anything beyond having 3 person in front of you and interacting together, anything beyond that, I think somebody will hide. And just by social, how people socialize. So I think 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3 is about max. At the same time, I would like to make a pitch here for group mentoring. I think we sometimes underestimate the power and the effectiveness of group mentoring. We always have this idea that 1-to-1 is the only way for it to work. I don't think so. In fact, if you think about this, our Lord Jesus did not start with one-on-one. He actually started with 12. But out of the 12, he has 3 that he would consider closer to him. And out of the 3, he has 1 spiritual son. So I would take that as a good model. I can have up to 12 people that I'm spending time with, but out of the 12, I can do some group mentoring in groups of 3. And then there are some that I think we take time to be on a one-on-one basis. But don't underestimate the impact of group mentoring. Because I think in the group mentoring situation, we don't just learn from the mentor, but we also learn from one another. And we can form a learning community, which is very powerful.
Cool. Thanks. That was very comprehensive. We have a question here from Vanessa. She was asking about you mentioned earlier about giving your mentees a godly orientation, trying to build value change. And her question was, I think, kind of saying that value change, isn't it purely the work of the Holy Spirit? So then how does the mentor's role play into this, given that we actually can't really change someone from greedy to generous?
The thing is this, what the mentor does is that, first of all, we point our mentorees to the source of change, which is the Word of God and the Spirit of God. So we always point them towards what God says and who God is. And that's why the godly orientation focus on that. It's giving them a worldview which is totally dependent on who God is and what God says. And therein is the power to change. See? But sometimes, even though our mentees know what God says and who God is, but they can have blind spots. That you and I have blind spots. There are areas in our life we don't even realize that we are so weak in that. And it takes a mentor sometimes to put a finger where that need is and actually speak into it. And it causes us to realize that, that's an area I need to deal with. And sometimes a mentor exposes, the fault lines in our life. And then we turn back to who God is and what God says and allow that to change us. So I think the mentor has a part to play in this whole thing.
So you would say that the mentor's role is more like shining a light, as opposed to actually being the mode for
the
change.
light itself.
Yeah.
You put a finger where the jugular vein is and actually say, this is what you need to deal with. And people sometimes don't even realize it. Like for me and my own personal experience, I had a mentor who really spoke into my family life, that area of my family life. I spent, there was one season in my life where I traveled so much that I really didn't have enough time for my wife, for my children. And this mentor is so skillful. Every time we meet, he would always end, not by confronting me or anything, but he would always tell me a story about his family. He would tell me things like, today my son called me, my son is 35 years old, but he called me and he tell me, how grateful he is that I spent time with him. and without saying anything, he's kind of putting his finger where my jugular vein is, and he's kind of telling me how good it is to really give time to your family. And through that, right, he skillfully steer me towards this and help me to see my own blind spot. That is mentoring at its best.
Bit of a subtle backhand.
Subtle backhand, that's right.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. We are at 8:46. Maybe let's go for a couple more, and we'll see how things go. If you want to stop at any time, Pastor, just let me know. I know
I'm okay.
You may
if
be getting
you guys
older.
stay there, I will stay with you.
All right. There's another question from Wei Song.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
His questions are getting all the top scores, huh?
Well, maybe he's just a really wise guy. He says, do you have any advice for people who are inclined towards introversion and struggle to reach out for a mentor?
Okay. Actually, there is this great verse, right, in the book of Ephesians that this is a verse for introverts. I actually found this verse some time back in Ephesians 4. It's a great verse in Ephesians 4, 16. If I could take you there, Ephesians 4, verse 19. Okay, listen to this one. It's so good. Ephesians 4:29. Listen to this great verse. It goes like this. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their need, that it may benefit those who listen. Okay, one more time. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their need, that it may benefit those who listen. Let me draw a picture for you, okay? Here's how the picture looks like. If I can draw 3 lines to illustrate this verse, he says, there are 3 lines here. One is a longer line, and he says, it's all that I can say. And for those of us who are extroverted, we can have a very long line because we got a lot to say. But then out of all that I can say, there are only some that are helpful. Okay, only some of all that I can say, only some are helpful. And out of all the helpful things that I can say, there's even less that is needed in that time, at that time. Okay, so listen again to what it says here in Ephesians 4:20. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. Okay, and when you join these lines together, what you get is a very small triangle at the end, which means this: we don't have to say a lot in order to bring true encouragement to people, to edify others. We don't really have to say a lot. You only need to say the right things at the right time. So for those of us who are introverted, okay, I got good news for you. You can be a great encourager. You can edify others. Not because you got many words to say, but because you say the right things at the right time. And the same for mentoring. Okay, if I'm a mentee and I'm quiet, but if I ask the right questions, I can get a mentor to respond to me. If I'm a mentor, but I'm an introvert, I don't have to say a lot all the time. I just need to know what do I need to say that my mentee really needs to hear. And then that alone will bring change, and it will bring an impact in people's life. So for someone like that who's asking this question, if I'm an introvert, can I find a mentor? Absolutely. Just follow the principles that I gave you. The key issue in mentoring is the mentoring issue. Then go initiate one conversation with a potential mentor, and it may just give you the breakthrough that you're looking for. The same for those of you who are mentors, but you feel like you're not very talkative, it's totally okay. Just say the right things at the right time. If you're introvert, you're probably a good listener at the same time. So that's a strength in itself.
Great. Cool. We have a ton of questions. So we're going to go until 9 p.m. I've just been informed.
Okay.
So if you have any question that you really want answered, make sure that you're voting them up, because we're probably only going to give a couple more questions their fair go. Here's one from Jays. I like this question. It says, what are 2 or 3 common pitfalls or mistakes that a mentoring relationship might have? Both from the mentor and the mentee's point of view.
You know, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in mentoring, I'll share with you 2. One is that sometimes as a mentor, we're not careful, and we actually violate confidentiality. I used to have a group mentoring group, and in the mentoring group, one of the mentees actually shared with me about how the person had lost a job. Okay, they lost a job, and he was really affected by that. And then I happened to meet up with another 2 mentees on a separate occasion, and I actually just shared that with the 2 mentees and said, do you have any job vacancy? Perhaps you can help this person. But I didn't have permission to actually share that. And when I shared that and it was found out, I actually lost that mentoring relationship as a result. And that was a mistake on my part, because I violated confidentiality. And this is one area that as mentors, we are trusted by our mentees. And they share with us things that are personal, share with us things that are very private to them. But if we're not careful and then we just divulge it, I think it could really mess up the relationship. So that's one area. Please watch out for this, that we never betray the trust of our mentees. Another one that I think I make a mistake on was when we are too fast to actually affirm, too fast to actually release a person because we are too excited and we think that, wow, the person has found this new ministry, or he thinks that this is his ministry, and we are so keen to affirm, so keen to want to see them progress, that we just affirm everything. And we just give the impression that this is the best thing you can do, there's no issues at all, you are ready for it, when actually the person is not ready. And I've done that before and actually pushed people into ministry when they're not ready for it. And the end result can be disastrous. So I think also as a mentor, we need to be very measured and not become too fast to affirm, too fast to agree, simply because we want to see things happen in our mentee's life. So that's at least 2 areas, that pitfalls that we had to really watch out for. Never violate privacy, and respect the boundaries of your mentees, and never be too fast to affirm, simply because we want to see things happen. Hope that's helpful.
What about from maybe the mentee's perspective? What are some common pitfalls that you see mentees usually get to when it comes to these relationships?
I think for mentees, sometimes I think one of the big pitfalls for mentees is when we begin to think that our mentors can do no wrong, because that's not true. I think mentors are also people with clay feet, and we always need to check what they share with us, with God and with His Word, and never just take for granted. Don't have the mentality that where you lead, I will follow, what you feed, I will swallow, because sometimes what they feed you may not be good for you. So just be wise about this. Our mentor is not there to tell us what to do. They are not there to lead our life for us, but they are actually there as a source of wisdom. And they also have clay feet. So that's one thing that you don't want to end up hero worshipping. Instead of just gleaning and learning.
Great. Well, thanks for that. That was I like that question. That was very interesting.
Good question.
Here's one from maybe the last one from one of our own pastors, Pastor Dan Yan. Shout out to you.
Dan, shout out to you, Dan.
What steps can I take to continuously keep growing as a mentor?
I would say we need to be continually filling up our own wells, so that whenever we meet up with our mentees, they drink from a well that is full and a well that has fresh water. We are learning new things all the time. We are growing ourselves, and one of the best ways to do it, read. Interact with other mentors, and find a mentor for ourselves so that we can learn from others and then at the same time impart to others. It's like one scripture says, that we want to be like a teacher who is able to take treasures, both old and new, out of the storehouse. And when we are able to do that, then I think our mentees will not be hearing the same stories from us and having the same lessons from us all the time. So let's keep our wells full, keep our waters fresh by reading, by learning, by gleaning, and by spending time with other resourceful people in our own life. Thanks, Dan, for that question. Good one.
Great question, Pastor Dan Yan. Good one. Alrighty, I think we might just call it there. I know there's still a ton more questions. I don't know. Do you have any way that they could access some resources to ask you? I have no idea.
Okay, at some point we will probably do a proper series where, over a series of sessions on mentoring itself. And maybe when that series is ready, we'll make sure that you guys get informed and you can actually access them and get a hold of them. So that's one thing that I can do during this time.
Great. I'm just going to release the poll for the last question that we asked, which was, for those people, are you looking for a mentor? Are you looking to be mentored? Are you looking for both? Here are the answers so far. So we had, I think, about 60 to 70 people answer our poll. 63% are looking both for a mentor and also to mentor someone else. 25% are looking for a mentor. Only 7% are looking to mentor someone, and 4% are still happy just to be by yourself. So that's very interesting. Cool. On that topic, if you are a member of FCC and you're watching this, internally we do have a ministry which tries to connect mentors and mentorees, depending on things like age, gender, subject of mentoring, and all that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in either being a mentor in FCC or being mentored by someone else within the same church, head to our website, fcc.live. There is a mentoring tab there. Just follow the links. It's pretty self-explanatory. It'll ask you to fill out a form and ask you questions about what kind of area you want to be mentored or what area you would like to mentor in. And hopefully we'll be able to match you up with someone. And, especially for those people who are looking for both, hopefully this will be an answer to that prayer and to that desire. Awesome. So fcc.live, the mentoring tab, head there. That will help you out. Just as we end, tonight's stream, tonight's webinar will be available for free on our FCC Vimeo account. So if you found tonight helpful and it blessed your heart, feel free to share it with your friends, other church leaders, whoever it is you might think might benefit from it. You can also rewatch it yourself if you find that useful. And make sure that you join us for next week's webinar, where we're going to be talking about managing conflict. That was another popular topic that a lot of people wanted to find out about. So join us next week, same time, around 7:30. Follow our Facebook page for any updates. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time. Have a great night.
Thank you. God bless. Good night.